Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a theological study that puts forward a pretty bold idea that history isn't just random, but actually follows a very precise divine schedule. Let's dig in and see how it builds that case. So, we're exploring a theological study that makes a fascinating and, you could say, pretty radical claim. The idea is that history isn't just one random event after another, but it's all following a meticulously planned out, divinely appointed schedule. And really, the entire argument hangs on this one powerful statement. The source text kicks things off by arguing that, look, just as there was this huge, comprehensive plan for salvation, there are also very specific times and seasons for every single part of that plan to unfold. The suggestion is, absolutely nothing is left to chance. To explain this, the text introduces a really central metaphor, a harvest. Now, this isn't about farming or crops. It's about a special period in history, a time when truths that have been hidden away for centuries are finally meant to become clear, to be understood. This, of course, raises a huge question, right? If this grand cosmic clock actually exists, how come it hasn't been common knowledge all along? Well, the author's answer is that this information was sealed on purpose. It wasn't meant for just anyone, and it definitely wasn't available at all until the proper time finally rolled around. So, to explain how this hidden knowledge finally gets revealed, this study uses this really powerful image, a divine time lock. You know, like the kind you'd find on a massive bank vault, but this one is for prophecy. The idea here is pretty straightforward. For centuries, these prophecies were basically locked up tight. It didn't matter how smart you were, how wise, or how devout, the lock was on a timer. And it was only set to click open at a very specific, pre-appointed moment, which the text calls the morning of a new age. And this lays out the whole process the author is proposing. For ages, prophecies were sealed. Then, history moves into this period called the time of the end. At that point, the due time arrives. The time lock clicks open. And boom, the combination, the actual key to understanding it all, is suddenly available to those who are paying attention. And this quote from the source really is the anchor for the entire argument. The belief is that the very fact that new understanding is bubbling to the surface is, in itself, a sign of the times. It's proof that the due time has finally come. Okay, so if we go along with this idea of a great cosmic clock, what evidence does the text actually offer that it even exists, let alone that it's accurate? Let's take a look at how the argument is built from here. The author points way back to some of the most foundational events in Scripture. The argument is that Jesus' birth, his death, his resurrection, these weren't just random things that happened. They happened precisely on schedule, in the fullness of time, in due time, on the third day. This, the text says, sets a really clear precedent for other major events to also be on a strict timetable. And this brings up a really key distinction. According to the source, this isn't about telling the future just for the fun of it, or to satisfy some idle curiosity. No, these time prophecies are meant to be a practical guide, kind of like a lamp for people who need to understand the signs of their own day and recognize these big events as they're happening. This brings us to what the text presents as the ultimate purpose of all this prophetic knowledge. See, it's not just information. It's actually presented as a tool for separation, one that divides people into two very distinct groups. The study draws an incredibly sharp line in the sand here. On one side, you have the brethren, the children of the light, who've got this lamp of prophecy and they get what's going on. But on the other side, you've got they, the rest of the world, who are supposedly in darkness, mistakenly saying peace and safety, and are going to be caught completely off guard. And this biblical quote is really used to frame the whole point. This special knowledge isn't meant to be some global forecast designed to scare everybody. No, it's presented as a specific promise, an assurance for the faithful, to make sure that for them, this day of the Lord doesn't just show up out of nowhere, like a thief in the night. But of course, this raises a pretty major objection. I mean, what about the long history of failed doomsday predictions? The source text even brings up Adventist movements, groups known for this stuff. How does the author explain away all those times when people got it wrong? Well, the source reframes these failures in a really interesting way. It argues that the predictions weren't wrong about the timing. They were wrong about the event. They were looking for the wrong thing at the right time. For example, maybe they were expecting a literal physical fire to consume the earth instead of a more symbolic social upheaval. It was a mistake of interpretation. And this really brings the whole argument full circle. The entire system of prophecy described in this text is meant to be an internal guide. It's designed to enlighten, to comfort, and to prepare a very specific group of believers, not to go out and terrorize the masses into converting. So ultimately, this whole analysis of the source material leaves us with a really provocative final thought. The author makes a compelling case that history isn't random, that a great clock is ticking down to a foretold conclusion, and that the signs are all there for those who have the key to see them. And it challenges the reader with one simple, direct question. Are you watching?